He remembers, not out of bitterness, but because precision demands it. The Sigma male operates with a rare level of clarity, one that doesn't rush to forget just because society tells him that's what healing looks like. Unlike the masses who forgive to feel better or to appease social norms, the Sigma understands that not every wound needs to be mended. In fact, some of them are meant to leave marks. These are not emotional trophies, but tactical reminders. You see, forgiveness has long been sold as a noble act, a moral high ground. But for the Sigma, forgiveness isn't always wise. It can be dangerous. In a world where apologies are handed out like coupons and second chances are manipulated for gain, forgiveness can become an open door for repeated offense. That's not healing, that's exposure. So the Sigma opts for something different: discernment. He doesn't react with rage, nor does he spend his energy plotting revenge. He simply withdraws, with intent, with standards. His silence isn't weakness, it's a reinforced boundary. Neuroscience backs this up. The brain encodes painful memories more vividly than neutral ones precisely because it's trying to protect you from future harm. The Sigma uses this biological truth as psychological armor. His memory isn't emotional baggage, it's a data log. When he chooses not to forgive, it's not because he can't, it's because he won't let a past betrayal be smoothed over with artificial niceties. Closure to him is not a conversation. It's a decision made internally and enforced quietly. He doesn't need the last word, a dramatic confrontation, or even an apology. His exit is the message. This mindset doesn't make him cold, it makes him calculated. Selective remembrance is how he evolves, how he protects his peace and sustains his power. Because for the Sigma male, memory isn't a burden, it's strategy. And in his world, the quietest man in the room often has the sharpest mind. Number one, because forgiveness often breeds repetition. The Sigma observes cycles, patterns and loops that most people are blind to until the damage is already done. He watches people not just for who they are, but for what they repeat. In a world where most are emotionally impulsive, the Sigma male is strategically reflective. Forgiving someone too quickly in his mind isn't just an act of grace, it's an unguarded opening, a soft target. It's not that he's cold or cruel, rather he understands a crucial psychological truth. Humans are habitual creatures. Behavior that's rewarded, like being forgiven without consequence, is likely to be repeated. He knows this. That's why the Sigma sees pain not as something merely to be endured, but as raw, unfiltered information. Pain carries data. It reveals truth about others and about himself. It sharpens the mind and strengthens discernment. If someone stabs you once, it's betrayal. But if they stab you again after you've let them back in, it's no longer just their fault. It becomes your responsibility. In this sense, the Sigma doesn't forgive quickly, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. He doesn't dwell in hate. In fact, hate is inefficient. It consumes energy and clouds judgment, but he does remember because remembrance is a weapon. Neuroscience backs this up. Emotional memories are deeply encoded in the brain to serve as survival mechanisms. When you burn your hand on a stove, you don't touch it again. The Sigma applies this same biological law to human behavior. He doesn't romanticize forgiveness as many do. He sees that while forgiveness can bring inner peace, it can also dull one's survival instinct if applied without discretion. The Sigma thrives because he doesn't ignore his instincts, he hones them. Instincts aren't just animal reflexes. They're the subconscious culmination of all your experiences, observations, and lessons. And in a world full of manipulation, false apologies, and repeat offenders, the Sigma's ability to remember, to recognize the cycle, and to act accordingly is not a flaw, it's his edge. Forgiveness has its place, but so does self-preservation. For the Sigma, it's not about revenge or resentment, it's about not being anyone's fool twice. Number two, because closure is a myth. Most people chase forgiveness like it's a treasure map to emotional closure. They believe that hearing "I'm sorry" or having that final heart-to-heart will finally bring them peace. But the Sigma male operates on an entirely different wavelength. He doesn't wait for apologies to sleep soundly, nor does he crave conversations to untangle the past. In fact, studies in emotional intelligence suggest that individuals with a high internal locus of control, like Sigma males, tend to rely on self-direction rather than external validation. For the Sigma, closure isn't something to be begged for, it's something to be created. He doesn't romanticize goodbyes or waste time decoding what went wrong in someone else's mind. Once he extracts the lesson, the emotional data and the psychological insight, he files it away like a mission completed. The door is closed, not slammed, not locked, just respectfully shut. He knows that trying to get closure from others often reopens wounds rather than heals them. While others sit in emotional limbo waiting for peace talks, the Sigma already has his boots on, walking into his next chapter. Closure, in his eyes, is a luxury designed for those who fear solitude, who need shared understanding to move on. But the Sigma has mastered solitude. It's where he thrives, where he reflects, evolves, and sharpens his edge. There's no ceremony in his departure, no drawn-out goodbyes. His silence, the message. Psychologically speaking, this self-contained mindset is often associated with higher resilience and a deeper sense of identity. While society often encourages reconciliation and emotional processing with others, the Sigma processes inwardly, efficiently, and permanently. It's not coldness, but clarity. He doesn't carry grudges, he carries wisdom. Forgiveness for him is not an event, it's a quiet decision made in solitude, often without the other party ever knowing. He moves on, not because he's unaffected, but because he knows the true power lies in letting go without needing anything in return. That is the Sigma's closure. Clean, wordless, complete. Number 3, because forgiveness wastes energy, emotional processing, second-guessing, revisiting old wounds. These aren't just passing thoughts for the Sigma male, they're mental tolls with a measurable cost. You see, the Sigma operates like a strategist. Everything he does, every move he makes is filtered through a sharp internal calculus. Forgiveness for most people is seen as a noble act, an emotional release that leads to peace. But for the Sigma, it's not that simple. He understands that forgiving someone who has wronged him often requires reopening a wound, revisiting betrayal, and mentally rehearsing a narrative that drained him once before. It demands emotional labor, mental bandwidth that in his world is finite and sacred. According to neuroscience research, emotional processing consumes significant cognitive resources, particularly within the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and planning. The Sigma doesn't ignore this. Instead, he reallocates. He views forgiveness not through the lens of moral obligation, but through the pragmatic lens of energetic investment. That energy, he reasons, could be better spent elsewhere, building, creating, evolving. He's not interested in looping emotional narratives. He's interested in forward momentum. This doesn't mean he's cruel or bitter. Quite the opposite. Cutting ties isn't an act of vengeance, it's an act of clarity. He walks away not because he holds a grudge, but because he understands the price of re-engaging. In the language of strategy, it's called opportunity cost, the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one option is chosen. And when that option is emotional entanglement, he sees it as a liability. Studies in psychology have also shown that rumination, the act of mentally replaying negative events, can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and even depression. The Sigma knows this instinctively. He doesn't dwell, he detaches, he moves on. In a world that romanticizes emotional reconciliation, the Sigma carves out a different path, not one of coldness, but of self-preservation and high-level focus. He's not heartless, he's selective. And in choosing not to forgive, he's not being vindictive. He's simply choosing to invest his inner world in places where the return is growth, not grief. Number 4, because he's not trying to be understood. Forgiveness is often praised as a noble act, something associated with emotional maturity, spiritual growth, and being the so-called bigger person. In modern culture, it's seen as a sign of inner peace, a clean heart, or moral superiority. But for the Sigma male, forgiveness doesn't follow this well-beaten path. To him, it isn't a public performance or a chance to gain approval. He doesn't parade his emotional wounds on display just to receive applause for his healing process. He's not interested in looking wise, composed, or enlightened in front of others. The Sigma's world is internal, private, and governed by a strong code of self-respect. He draws boundaries not as a power play, but as a non-negotiable requirement for peace. And when someone crosses those lines, he doesn't scream, beg, or retaliate. He simply withdraws. Unlike others who may forgive for closure or to appear evolved, the Sigma male doesn't feel pressured to explain why he keeps his distance. According to studies in psychology, boundary enforcement is a core trait of emotionally autonomous individuals. And Sigma males often exhibit a heightened sense of self-differentiation, meaning they know where they end and others begin. So when he's hurt, he doesn't necessarily hold a grudge, but neither does he allow repeated access to his inner world. He may walk away without fireworks or speeches, and people often misread this as coldness. But it's not bitterness, it's precision. It's protecting what's sacred without seeking understanding or validation. Forgiveness, in his case, is not about letting someone off the hook. It's about choosing silence over conflict and peace over performance. The Sigma male would rather be misjudged and untouchable than understood and emotionally exposed, because to him invulnerability is not a weakness to overcome, it's a fortress of wisdom built from experience. And so while the world debates what it means to forgive and forget, the Sigma quietly remembers. Not to stay angry, but to stay sharp. In the end, his refusal to play by emotional social norms isn't an act of rebellion, it's a declaration of independence. He knows that not every wound needs to be healed with reconciliation. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in walking away and never looking back. Number 5. Because some lines can't be uncrossed. There are betrayals that don't heal, wounds not of the body but of the soul. Words once spoken, laced with deceit or cruelty, don't simply disappear into the ether. They echo in the mind, staining memories and rewriting the way a man sees the world. For the Sigma male, who already lives with calculated distance from the chaos of mainstream society, betrayal strikes differently. It doesn't just hurt, it recalibrates. Unlike others who may rush to forgive and forget, the Sigma male does not force himself into artificial amnesia. He doesn't pretend to erase what changed him. He accepts the fracture, studies it, learns from it, and rebuilds his life with that crack fully visible in the architecture of his soul. It becomes part of his emotional blueprint, not as a weakness, but as a warning. Psychologically, betrayal trauma can create long-term trust issues, according to studies in clinical psychology. When trust is broken, especially by those closest to us, it activates a survival response in the brain, often leading to avoidance, vigilance, and emotional detachment. These aren't flaws in Sigma behavior, they're adaptations. The Sigma male, already selective about who he lets in, becomes even more discerning. He doesn't live in bitterness, but in clarity. There is no return to what was, no illusion of going back to a time when innocence masked the truth, no second chance at first trust, and so no forgiveness, not in the traditional sense. That might sound harsh in a world addicted to positivity and second chances. But for the Sigma, forgiveness is not a performance for social approval. It's a decision tied to alignment and integrity. Forgiving someone who violated his inner code feels like betraying himself. So instead he honors the lesson, he remembers. Not to seek revenge, but to guard his peace. He doesn't carry hate, only awareness. In a society where people wear fake apologies like band-aids over self-interest, the Sigma male stands apart. He doesn't demand justice, but he never forgets the breach. And that cold, unwavering memory is what sets him free. Because in a world that moves on too fast, he moves deliberately, with eyes wide open and scars that tell stories no words ever could. Number 6, because forgiveness gives leverage. Apology is often seen as a noble gesture, a sign of remorse, a request to mend the damage. But to the Sigma male, it's more than that. It's a calculated chess move, a strategic maneuver meant to influence, reposition, or disarm. And forgiveness? That's the trap. That's the moment when the gates open, when boundaries blur, and when the one who once caused harm is given a second chance to do it again. The Sigma understands this psychological exchange with razor-sharp clarity. He knows that forgiving someone doesn't just mean letting go. In many cases, it means offering peace, emotional comfort, or even restored access to one's inner world. These are powerful currencies that Sigma males don't hand out lightly, especially not to those who betrayed or disrespected them. Unlike the alpha, who might confront or dominate, or the beta, who might submit or reconcile, the Sigma moves in silence and shadows. He sees beyond words and watches behavior. He's not swayed by tears, apologies, or elaborate justifications. Once trust is broken, the Sigma doesn't just patch things up for the sake of peace. He knows the cost of rebuilding is too high, and often the foundation has already crumbled. Psychology backs this mindset. Studies in emotional intelligence and boundary setting show that those who guard their inner peace and protect their emotional energy tend to experience greater long-term mental health. Sigma males embody this principle naturally. They've learned, often through painful lessons, that forgiveness extended too freely becomes a revolving door for manipulation. So when someone wrongs the Sigma and comes crawling back with an apology, it's not a cue for him to open his arms. It's a signal to assess, to evaluate intent, and most times to walk away. Forgiveness for the Sigma is not a gift, it's a guarded gate. He may move on, grow, and even release the resentment internally, but access, trust, connection, those stay locked. He keeps his enemies exactly where they belong, outside the circle, out of reach and out of relevance. Not out of hatred, but out of clarity, because some bridges are better left burned, not for revenge, but for protection. Number 7, because revenge isn't necessary, distance is. Unlike the alpha, who often meets conflict with dominance or direct confrontation, the Sigma male operates on an entirely different frequency, one of calculated detachment and quiet power. He doesn't seek retaliation. There are no emotional outbursts, no schemes to get back at someone. He doesn't waste time plotting returns or indulging in ego battles. His revenge, if you can even call it that, is his complete absence. A Sigma doesn't react, he retracts. When betrayed, insulted, or disrespected, he doesn't engage in a war of words or try to prove a point. He simply pulls away, he disappears, and in doing so, he thrives. His silence is not passive, it is purposeful. Studies in psychology suggest that emotional detachment, when practiced with intention, can be a sign of high emotional intelligence and self-regulation. Sigma males master this skill. Rather than being drawn into the emotional chaos of others, they observe, assess, and then remove themselves from environments that don't serve their growth or peace. This kind of exit isn't fueled by bitterness, it's rooted in self-respect. And ironically, nothing unsettles an enemy or rival more than a man who no longer acknowledges their existence. It denies them the power they seek. Sociologically speaking, humans are wired to seek validation, even in conflict. When someone doesn't respond to provocation, it creates psychological discomfort in the aggressor. The Sigma male understands this. His silence speaks volumes. His absence echoes louder than words ever could. He becomes a ghost, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally and mentally. While others are stuck replaying arguments or rehearsing comebacks, the Sigma has already moved on, building his life, elevating his mind, and investing in pursuits that matter. This isn't escapism, it's evolution. His focus shifts from retribution to transformation, and that's what makes the Sigma male not just different, but dangerously unforgettable. In a world addicted to attention and drama, the one who walks away without looking back is the one who leaves the deepest mark. Number 8, because he doesn't need redemption arcs. People love comeback stories. There's something undeniably compelling about the villain who changes his ways, the traitor who finds redemption, or the friend who finally realizes the depth of their betrayal and begs forgiveness. It feeds into our desire for closure, for happy endings, for transformation. But the Sigma male doesn't buy into that emotional fantasy. He lives in the raw and often harsh truth of reality. While others may cling to the hope that people change or that time heals all wounds, the Sigma understands that character is rarely altered by regret alone. Forgiveness to him is not automatic. It's earned through consistent action, not words. Psychology studies back this mindset, showing that while people change, long-term behavioral shifts are rare without serious introspection and effort. The Sigma doesn't stake his peace of mind on that slim chance. If someone lies, betrays, or disrespects him, he takes that as data, not drama. He doesn't sit around waiting for a redemption arc that may never come. If you burn the bridge, he doesn't camp beside the ashes hoping you'll return with bricks and apologies. He moves forward, finds a better route, and builds something stronger elsewhere, often alone but never weaker. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. The Sigma male operates on a philosophy of self-reliance, not self-sacrifice. He understands that nostalgia can be a trap, and misplaced hope can be more damaging than the initial betrayal. His silence isn't cold-hearted, it's calculated. He knows that energy spent revisiting old wounds is energy stolen from new growth, and in a world where loyalty is often performative and apologies are sometimes manipulative, the Sigma values actions over sentiment. He doesn't need grand gestures or emotional speeches, he needs proof, and until then he walks on, quietly, powerfully, and with zero interest in revisiting the ruins you left behind. That's not cruelty, that's wisdom earned from pain. While others romanticize reconciliation, the Sigma male chooses liberation. His comeback story isn't about fixing the past, it's about mastering the present, forging ahead without the chains of betrayal dragging him down. And in doing so, he becomes the hero of his own narrative, not because he saved the villain, but because he saved himself. The Sigma male isn't driven by bitterness or revenge. He's powered by strategy and emotional discipline. While others may preach forgiveness for inner peace, the Sigma finds peace through control, by choosing silence over confrontation and detachment over drama. He doesn't harbor hatred. Instead, he remembers what hurt him and learns from it. He knows some betrayals aren't just emotional scars, they're lessons, warnings. Forgiveness to him is not weakness, but sometimes letting go without re-entry is the wiser move. His refusal to forgive isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Some bridges, once burned, are meant to stay ashes. Stay curious, be unseen, be unfazed, be unforgettable.